The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Mark Kraynak along shortly. Busy day, just awesome morning outside, a little bit steamy perhaps, but sun is shining in Husker land. Hope you're doing all right. We'll get our starting five shout-outs going. And a big tip of the cap to Walter from Philly was in first at 6:12 Central Time this morning. So Walter, we got a single Walter out for being first in on the weekend edition. We only have 3 more Saturdays, Elijah, and then it is game time for UTEP as we're going to be down at the Single Barrel inside the Graduate for another football season. Excited about that. Big time practice today for Nebraska under the lights with, no pads, but a chance for Husker Nation to go help out in the world of NIL with the good folks at 1890. That's a big thing today. Good week of content from head coach Rule, his coordinators, several players. In the background is Mama Bunny as she is crawling back to bed. And already a swear word at 7:50 Central Time this morning from Mama. Also, yesterday, the quarterbacks and Glenn Thomas had a chance to say what's up. Brandon Vogel along a little bit later on from counterread.com. Anything fun last night, Elijah? And we being me and maybe others, inviting ourselves over for the Crawford fight tonight because you are such a kind host. There's a look of panic right now in Elijah's eyes.
I still don't know exactly what I'm doing for the Crawford fight, but if you're at my house, you're at my house.
That's code for
if
find your own watch party, old man.
No. If I'm not home, my roommate Alex will be. You can go hang out with him. I think you've met him before. I'll probably end up being home. I don't know. I ain't got anything better to do, but I guess we're not checked. If Kraynak makes it down, we could have a little party going. I'm not. I could bring I don't know, some almonds or something that would fit my diet.
See, I about took a picture of I went too small last night with the steak, and it was incredible steak. And the method, again, to shout out our friend, the Ericksons, Jay Bird and of course, Jeff Erickson out in Hayes Center. This method of 2-2 rest 2-2 for cooking your meat. So I did about 2.5 minutes per side on my grill. Let it rest for 5 minutes. I was playing prison guard because all 3 pups were out last night, as they were looking at that steak longingly as it rested for 5 minutes. And then I did it again for about 2.5 minutes each side and then put it in foil for another 5. And it was the perfect medium rare. But I just needed more of it, dude. Needed more of it. Had a strip last night. I've got a couple filet in the fridge that may have to fire up. But it's you live and you learn, right? Better to over prepare than under prepare, and that's kind of the theme of Nebraska football. They're prepping not only Dylan Raiola but that quarterback room. Let's get the starting 5 shout-outs going this morning. Can find us and subscribe Hail Varsity YouTube. Always watch the show that way Monday through Saturday, and on Twitter as well at H Varsity Radio. We're streaming also on KFOR Facebook. Check that out. Walter already credited for being in first. Eat beef. Good to have you in. Second in the stream this morning. Our starting 5. Black Hills Breaded. Love it. He is headed to go change cups at the Spearfish Canyon Golf Course. That is an incredible course, Brennan. It's beautiful. I can only imagine what the tee box looks like this morning in the Black Hills. Rick is in. Rick, appreciate you. Michael, good to have you in from North Carolina. And also Larry in. Good morning. Going to be fun to see what happens this season. Give Dylan a year. He'll be great. That from Rick. Part of the Boulder Peace Treaty is Jeff Snitley. Snitley, I don't know, are you fishing this morning, Snitley, or are you just checking us out? Appreciate you. Demp is here. Anyone hearing Gifford rumors? Good question, Demp. We will try and jump in there. The rumor being what's his status for the season. That would suck. But I have not heard anything with that. With your Southeast orbit, Elijah, have you heard anything along those lines?
About what now? Sorry,
GIF being not available this season. That's already popped up from Demp in the season.
That has not run into my orbit. In fact, we even had a picture posted, I think, yesterday by the Husker football account of Gifford out in the practice field. And if there was any sort of injury behind the scenes, you think that might be in poor taste a little bit to post a picture of him at practice. But I do not have any inside information there.
Yeah, we haven't gotten that red flag or flare up. Bryce is in. Bryce, good to have you. And he is ready for football season. Mr. Snitley, another Snitley. Yeah, I think I'll serve some Cornhead Lager at the Big Red Preview tonight. Steven is in. Steven, good to have you. Moonbot says, howdy, nerds. Shane, good to check in with you this morning. David in. David, good to have you. Crazy Spider Adventures is in this morning. Brent, thank you for checking in. 3-putt said 750. I think we were 747 this morning. As you can see, we were ready to go at 742 this morning. So does that count?
No.
If we time hack ourselves?
No, because that's happened before as well, where it's like, oh, Mark and I are here. Where's Schmidt at? Schmidt's not here. It's 7:43. We weren't on time. It's
Raska in from Texas. Good to have you in. And we're doing roll call. Yes, we're doing roll call. We've expanded from the starting 5. The Grinch, Sexy Grinch is in. Crew, good to have you. So, yeah. Let's hear a little bit of Glenn Thomas this morning. Is that doable, Elijah? Maybe, maybe not.
It is. I actually need a second.
No, that's fine. So I want to hear a little Glenn Thomas this morning, and I want to get into this a little bit. And Nebraska football has had talent for a lot of years, and sometimes that talent is not fully developed. They don't hit their ceiling. Sometimes Nebraska is able to squeeze out every ounce of juice from that talent, and that a lot of it is coaching. I mean, it's really a two-way street that needs to turn into a one-way street where you get maximum performance, coaching, development, all of that round into one within the frame of a ball game. And this is a situation where, I think both could mesh for Nebraska this season. But with Glenn Thomas, let's hear from Glenn Thomas when it comes to that fine line. And Sammy McEwen asked this question at the presser yesterday. The making the play part at quarterback versus living to fight another down. Cut 6, we'll hear it here. And this is something I'm intrigued by moving forward, right? Because we think the offense is going to be better. It has to be. It can't really not be from last season. And Glenn Thomas talking about that decision-making.
Yeah, I think there is a fine line to that. I think there's a science, and you definitely don't want to take, as you say, take their stinger away. But we do have some guys that do have, arm talent for sure, and can get down the field. I think there is a component of take what the defense is giving you too, right? Like, hey, they're playing cover 2. There's a drop 8. There's guys way back there. Obviously, we're not going to force the ball down the field, so that's not a time to do that. If they're allowing you or giving you a look to maybe do something aggressive down the field, then definitely we want to do it. Say they give us man coverage one time a game, or we don't want to miss that one chance to be aggressive in man coverage.
Love that. And we hit on it a little bit yesterday. And Elijah, Nebraska was very anemic when it came to scoring points, really, aside from the Purdue game. 31 points, 7 of that off the blocked punt that was returned for a touchdown. You take the 7 away, it's still 24. But 24, really a high watermark. I mean, most of the ball games last year were 13-10, 17-14. It was a big play that got you a lot of your scores. It's not that Nebraska didn't have a 12-play, 70-yard drive, but they had few of them. We'll dive into this with Brandon Vogel in a little bit, but how do you feel this year about Nebraska's ability to be consistent, move the chains, score points, hit the big play, yes, but be a little more methodical? And it's going to be paramount for Nebraska to be able to just be good at decision making. That's from the coaches, Elijah. That's also from the players. And you think in a second year, even with a presumed freshman quarterback who may be beyond his years from a maturity standpoint, I think it could all come together for Nebraska. But it'd be good for the Big Red this season to have a setup where the coaching and the players and the execution all align. I mean, that's what you want. That's football. But it's been quite a long time. Defensively, 8-9 times out of 10, you got the execution and the coaching last year. On the offensive side, you had to kind of make due to some injuries, due to some inconsistency, due to a miss at quarterback, with the transfer situation. And what they did is they rode what Harburg did well, and Harburg played his ass off. Now you move forward. It'll be cool to see what a full offense looks like here with an arm, with a talent, with an experienced offensive line and a run game on top of the wideouts. What are you smiling about?
I like the way you said that. It'll be interesting what Nebraska looks like with a full offense, because you think back on last year, not even close to a full offense. That wasn't a Division I fully fleshed out offense, because it was essentially 3 yards in a cloud of dust, maybe 1 to 2 yards in a cloud of dust a couple of times, followed by an incompletion on third down or an interception. Like, that's what the offense was last year. They got it rolling a couple of times. It was nice whenever you got the hot hand of Emmett Johnson at running back at the end of last season. That helped you. But yeah, it's to bring it back to the point that Glenn Thomas was making about your quarterbacks needing to be able to let it rip when they feel necessary, but also understanding that ball security is job security. It was one of the things that Dylan got into in his press conference I thought was interesting, talking about the importance of understanding your game situations. And that was kind of one of the questions I asked to Ben Butenbach yesterday, right before he dropped out. So I don't think we got an answer to this, but like, I asked him how much easier it is as a defense to be playing with a lead as opposed to playing with your back against the wall the entire game. And you kind of wonder the same thing offensively. Like, do the turnovers go down naturally if you're not playing from behind? Whenever you feel like you're up against it, you know what? You're down 3 points in the third quarter. There hasn't been much offense going all game. You picked up a first down. Now you're to 3rd and 5, and you're going to try to force one because you understand that another first down here would lead you to some momentum, cap it off with some points. You can get the game tied or even take the lead. Like, if you're playing with the lead, if you have a 7 to 10 point lead because of the work you've already put in, you as a quarterback are not going to be as inclined to go try to push the ball downfield when it's not necessarily there, or try to squeeze it into a tight window in zone coverage when it's not necessarily there. You're comfortable throwing the ball away, taking your check down and hoping your running back can make a man miss and get that 5-6 yards. Like, it does come down to game situation a little bit, and I'll be curious to see how that affects things, but let's also be clear. Raiola, in terms of arm talent, is better than what they've had in the room. I think the one question that remains to be seen is how does he adjust to the speed of college defenses and the processing power that's required. That's the question that we're not probably going to get answered, probably not even in week 1, maybe not until week 2, in terms of what can you do. I mean, there's some high-level defensive backs that play for Colorado. Travis Hunter's one of the best in the country. How does he handle the speed of that defensive back room, who is in year 2 of their rebuild, to be fair, and are probably going to be throwing some exotic looks at him to try to get the freshman quarterback uncomfortable. That's when you'll probably truly figure out what he has between the ears. But it is going to help, I think, in most games to understand that from the quarterbacking position, there's going to be less put onto their shoulders. you would hope, because of the pieces around them offensively, or pieces around them, I say, but more importantly, him, Dylan Riley, the pieces put around him can take pressure off him, because you can get some pressure taken off by your run game, by getting some points on the board. Maybe you get a takeaway that gives the offense a short field. All these things, these situational football things can help with the turnover battle, not to mention the fact that you're going to have a better arm talent at quarterback. The question that we just won't know is, what does the processing power look like as a freshman for Dylan Riley against your top level Division I defenses?
Well, I like that you've got Glenn Thomas. I like the fact that you have Sat, those two working in concert with a game plan tailored to the strengths of what your offense does well. And listen, you've got a wide receiver group that is going to jump. And what I mean by that is you have plenty in that room. You have lots of options. You have lots of options that can presumably get some separation. A lot of times last year when you did try and throw the football, and I reference Michigan State a lot. That game we were in the press box watching it, and pregame and then postgame, where you had too many turnovers any turnover was bad last year for Nebraska, but specifically on the wrong side of the 50, where the ball sailed and you had Fedoni in a zone open, right? There's a couple of times where Fedoni was open and the ball sailed, and it wasn't just Michigan State that ball game, but you had plays that were open. And
Michigan State was emblematic.
Yeah, too many times Nebraska didn't throw it to the right receiver, where you had guys that maybe of your 3 or 4 wide receivers in a route, you picked the wrong one to throw to, and it turned into a turnover or an incompletion. Let's hear from Dylan Raiola yesterday on that wide receiver room. He was asked about it, what he has been able to see. Brandon Vogel with us here in a moment. Mr. K is in. Nick is in. Good to have you, Nick. Jerry Schmidt, good to have you checking in. Spark Adventures is also in. Dylan in with that wide receiver room.
Yeah, I think we have a special core, a special group. It's on a foundation of trust and work. We came in January not really knowing what the room was going to look like. Obviously adding Jamal and Isaiah, but you add and you put a lot of new guys in the room together. It doesn't really matter how much talent. You got to come together and you got to work. So I'm really confident where we're at right now as a group. Tight ends have done a great job, not only catching the ball, but they understand they got to block and do those kind of things, and getting our backs more involved has been good. They not only run the ball, but they're threats to catch the ball. So we've developed a bunch of trust and a bunch of work. So it's been exciting.
Good to welcome in Brandon Vogel with us, the weekend edition, Hail Varsity. Brandon, of course, counterread.com is where you can subscribe and check his workout with Aaron Sorensen. Vogues, we're just kind of spitballing here about what could be on the Husker offensive side of the ball. Pretty awesome event tonight with the NIL fundraiser, the non-padded practice, but you'll get some personnel grouping ideas per se. And let me ask you this. What do you think could be sneaky fun or maybe even an edge with this Husker offense this year? We've spent a lot of time on defense. We've hit a ton on the experience factor, but just what element of the offense do you think could maybe give other teams some headaches?
I think their best bet there, perhaps outside of quarterback, is probably the wide receiver group. That's become a pretty intriguing group of guys fairly quickly. I think when you add Carter Nelson to that group in particular, at his size and with what we know of Nebraska's going to try to do with him, which isn't that much, which is the other kind of exciting part about it. Like, I think they have the opportunity they've got big bodies, so you can play that way. They've got speed, so you've got to worry about that. It's not just a upgrade in talent at wide receiver. I think it's an intriguing blend of different pieces that should work pretty well for the Huskers.
It's Brandon Vogel with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, the weekend edition. And Vogel, whenever you look at that wide receiver room, a name that's been intriguing to me, it's a name we heard yesterday from Dylan, Malachi Coleman, because they asked him about essentially both of them being number 15. Dylan referenced the fact that was going to be fleshed out somewhere down the road once single digits were figured out. I'm not sure if he was referring to himself or to Malachi or who's potentially at play there, but I want to get into Malachi Coleman because it wasn't the freshman year. I don't think he dreamed of just the one touchdown catch. But obviously you make your biggest jump in college between your freshman year and your sophomore year. We've heard that from enough coaches and players that I believe it to be the case, that full off season in the weight room, getting that development, that's whenever you take your biggest stride during college. But you look at the room with Jamal Banks and Nair being added in. Ja'Cory Barney's a freshman that can flash. Jaden Doss coming back from injury, redshirt freshman. You have Jalen Lloyd, a very, very crowded room, and you kind of wonder where Malachi fits in. Just want to get your thoughts on how important this fall camp is going to be for Malachi Coleman to establish a foothold in that wide receiver room, because with the talent that they've brought in there, you worry about a guy with all the physical tools of Malachi Coleman getting lost in that room if he doesn't put it together in year two.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid concern. You could also look at it as that room's going to be ultra competitive. So like, hopefully it kind of forces a little bit of urgency on guys. And they realize like there's a lot of players here capable of getting the football. If I want to get it myself, you do have to have a big August. And I mean, we'll see like the entire offseason to this point. I don't want to put it like, oh, the next 30 days will decide things, because the evaluation is always ongoing. But I think to Malachi still, there's a role in this offense. So if we look at Banks as kind of I don't want to call him security blanket, but he's the veteran guy. You know, he was Wake Forest's leading receiver once, I think, but then not last year. He was just really solid. You need guys like that. And past 3 seasons, a transfer wide receiver has led Nebraska in receiving. I think Banks has the potential to do that. So if you kind of set him over there and say, well, you can feel pretty good about that. Who's going to be like the downfield threat this year? And it doesn't have to be just one guy, but who's the first one you put out there? I think Coleman's in the discussion for that. Nayor, that's what he was at Wyoming, but that's now 3 seasons ago. So while his veteran experience, I think, certainly benefited Nebraska, he's still a little bit of a mystery to me. And then Lloyd was certainly in that group. He was kind of big plays only. Anything else need not apply. And obviously you'd expect that to change as he becomes a more experienced player. I kind of look at Lloyd and Coleman together. Yeah, you mash their production together. That's a pretty good third receiver. Is one of those guys going to emerge to kind of be the third receiver or fourth receiver on his own? I think is the big question.
Vogues, you and I spent a lot of January 1st, January 2nd, pre-Tommy Frazier watching Nebraska in 2 locations, Miami, the old Orange Bowl, or Nebraska in the Fiesta Bowl. What happened those days, those nights? Well, it was a really game defensive effort by Chuckster and his crew. The offense was just swallowed up by a 4-3 defense that flew around and had, linebackers that were as fast as it felt like as your running game. And where did Florida State go to work? Where did Miami go to work all those years? It wasn't always the deep ball that would kill Nebraska's corners or safeties. It was linebacker on running back, right? I mean, it was just a wear out. It was just a wear out for a lot of years until Ed Stewart came along. So I ask this, let's flip it around with Nebraska's passing game, with Nebraska's pro style. You have Ramir Johnson. You've got Emmett Johnson. Do you anticipate Nebraska's receiving game being, more applicable to that running back check down, right? Marlon Lucky, think about it, 76 catches or whenever the hell it was in 06. That's real. I mean, teams don't tackle like they used to anymore. Why not get a dude out in space and make 3 yards 9? You can do it with tight ends as well in the flat. But how much of that do you expect to see in Nebraska's offense? We know about the take the top off speed folks. We know about Banks moving the chains. We know about the tight ends in the middle of the field. But you got some backs, dude, that could be problems in space with this offense. And it's really a simple throw.
Yeah, it is. I think we'll see more of it than we've seen recently from Nebraska. I wonder about, I could see for Ramir specifically, maybe having a couple of plays where it's like he's basically your primary receiver, even if he's coming out of the backfield. For the most part, I would think it would still be your check down option for most of the passing plays Nebraska's going to run. And I think part of that is you just have to look at the talent at wide receiver, or what we think is going to be pretty good talent. Like I said, like there's not a ton of proven guys there, but there's intriguing guys there. It becomes so much of college football today is get the ball in the hands of your best athletes, and to your point, Schmitty, make teams tackle. And it's the other piece that kind of folds into this, if assuming Raiola is the starter. It doesn't come up often, but Nebraska's been so heavily reliant on running quarterbacks. What happens when you have one where that's not really part of the equation? I actually think it's better, because unless you have there's a wide range of dual threat quarterbacks, right? And unless you have an Adrian Martinez, a Taylor Martinez, where it's like, we could throw the ball to this guy in the slot if he played slot. Like a lot of times, you're kind of taking the ball away from maybe a better player in space when you lean too heavily on the quarterback run. And it has other unintended effects too, of just the wear and tear. Turnovers, I think, is a big one. So I actually look at, if Nebraska's looks a little more pro style, it could be a good thing. That might help the turnover piece of it on its own a little bit, even though it feels pretty foreign in Lincoln based on what we've seen in the past.
Brandon, how do you define pro style whenever you talk about Nebraska's, what its offense could be this year? Because pro style, it's changed in recent years. It's kind of become an amalgamation of all the different offenses. College has been a big factor in influencing the NFL. I know Matt Rule's referenced the 49ers offense before. Is that kind of the thought you have in mind with pro style?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think Chris was on the right path there, kind of talking about running backs in the passing game. Like, I still associate that a little bit with pro style. Like, the most general way for me is like, it's really about spreading the ball around. And it's become all mixed up, both at the pro level, because a lot of stuff from college has come up, and at the college level, like, yeah, we like to put labels on things, and I like labels. I like being able to say, oh, they run, the air raid or whatever. But even that is like really jumbled up. So, unless you're doing something like, say, Tennessee does now with the ultra wide, split the wide receivers like all the way out to the sidelines, like everyone else is pretty much running some version of pro style concepts at the college level, but from what we would call basically spread formations. So it's there's not a lot of differentiation.
I envision with Nebraska, the number of tight ends they have, those are mismatches. I envision a lot of one back, three wide options, get the slot in action, use the cutback ability with some of your backs, be good between the tackles, and then give me a little Bill Walsh or Green Bay Packers. I mean, I think of how many times Favre would check down to Amon Green or Roger Craig or Rathman, just going back years, where it was really simple to make it 2nd and 3. And that wasn't a real thing a year ago. Out of necessity, they just did what they deemed their offense could do best, and that's run some option and use Harburg's athleticism. And then our favorite play ever in the Nebraska playbook, the option pass, was how they scored points. So we touched a lot on offense, and the other thing we hit on this morning, Vogues, is getting that coaching and execution combo where, Nebraska has playmakers, but you have a staff and a group of coaches that are going to get guys in position to really maximize their ability. And it just seems like last year it was such a fire drill, and I'm not knocking. I'm saying it with all the injuries, you just had to kind of shake yourself from week to week to week to week. Your constant was the defense. I'm interested to get your thoughts here on just what you anticipate from this staff with this roster this year, as far as on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think it could look significantly different, if not scheme-wise, results-wise, because every yard Nebraska gained last year, particularly over the back half of the season, felt hard. Like there was no easy, like, we're just gonna zip it out to Billy Kemp, on a bubble or tunnel or something, and take 6 yards, and you can do that all day long. Like, those plays weren't there. I mean, and Nebraska ran the ball a ton because it was kind of like, well, let's hand it off and take 3-4 yards and see where that gets us. And it did set up some big play action passes. You had big plays from the QB run game. I would expect that will be a much smaller facet of the offense this year. So I think you'll see a lot more easy throws, particularly if you're starting a true freshman quarterback early in the year. You can kind of build them up to speed. Although, to Elijah's earlier point, you got some pretty good DBs coming in week 2, so it's not a total soft launch here. You got to be ready to go. But that's college football. I mean, I think regardless of like where Nebraska ends up points wise, I would expect things to look a lot easier for this offense. And what point total does that end up in? I don't know yet. But I think they'll do a better job. Well, they have more playmakers, assuming they don't have the injury problems they had a year ago. You'll have some. Just get the ball to the guy that's open, because I think you've got enough in terms of pass catchers that odds are that's going to be a pretty dangerous guy most of the time.
And Brandon, with this, I kind of think about the impact of the RPO and how it can help this offense, because Matt Rule said it before, like if you roll a safety down, put 8 guys in the box, I think the quote was, "We're going to absolutely murder you." With the speed they have a wide receiver going deep.
It's a T-shirt.
The other factor there is even if you're not going deep with it, I mean, the RPO factors, if you roll another guy into the box, you're going to be leaving one-on-ones on the outside, and you have a possession wide receiver this year in Banks that can take advantage of that with his size and his strength in the RPO game. If you decide to leave an extra defensive back out there in your back end as to slow down the passing attack, it's going to leave you one less guy in the box that your offensive line has to block. And there's a lot of high praise about the offensive line out of fall camp early. I think that they think that they'll be able to take advantage of that if you're not rolling another guy into the box. I think about how well the RPO could potentially work this year. You saw it in the spring game. That's kind of where I think like the taking easy yards, taking what the defense is giving you could really factor in this year, because it's just a numbers game with the running game. And if you don't have the numbers, you should have an advantageous matchup on the outside. And that kind of comes down to Dylan Rilo's processing power pre-snap. Can he read what the defense is going to be giving him and get the ball out or hand it off as necessary? That is where I think Nebraska could really take advantage of the quote unquote, take what the defense is giving you.
Yeah, and I mean, all accounts are that Dylan's pretty advanced in that piece of it. He'll also have the benefit of in-helmet communication, with the coaches, which they have brought up multiple times, speaking about all the quarterbacks, not just Dylan, of course, but that'll be a big thing. It'll actually be interesting when we get to the end of the year to see what that does to point totals. If it'll bump it up a little bit from the national average of where we've been the past 3-4 seasons, we'll be able to see maybe what impact that new rule had, and if it doesn't. But I think you're right on in that RPO will become a bigger piece of things for Nebraska, We've been used to newfangled option most often, being of the zone read variety. I think it's going to be more pure RPO this time based on the strengths that they have.
Really fast, Ring. You talked about the average scoring. What do you know? What off the top of your head, what the average scoring in college football was last year? Because the place my mind goes is, well, if Nebraska can get their offense to average in 2024, what does a truly average offense look like? Because you think it's got to be at least 3 points better with how atrocious some of that offense we saw last year was.
Yeah, most years it's usually around 28. Last year was 27.6. And I'm looking at a spreadsheet right now. The biggest offensive improvement last year was, anybody want to guess?
Washington?
No. Yeah. Who really kind of
Texas State?
Sure. That's where I was going.
Yeah. They improved by 15 points per game over 2022.
Wow.
It looks like if you improve by 4 points a game, that was Troy last year. That'll get you in the top 35 best improvements from a year ago. Nebraska could do that. Nebraska fell by about that last year from 2022, I think.
Let me ask you this, Vogues, with the points per game in this new Big Ten, is it going to stay where you score 30, you win? That's the magic number. It's the magic number for Nebraska. That's been the magic number for a lot of the teams each year that have been on the mountaintop in the Big Ten. Does that number need to creep up with Oregon and Washington and UCLA and SC coming to town? I asked that because SC scored, 34, 35 points a ball game, but they gave up 4.9 a carry and 29 a game. So
yeah.
What's his first year look like as we celebrate the commercial?
Yeah, it might bump up a little bit. That's a really interesting question because I went back and looked at this a couple of years ago and 30. If you average 30 points a game in the Big Ten, you're basically winning 10 games. 3 teams did that last year: Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. Maryland was at 29.7. Maryland went 8-4 before the bowl game. So you're right there. I could see it. Maybe 1 year won't be enough to go on. But maybe that magic number climbs to 32. We get 4 years down the road into an 18-team Big Ten. But I wouldn't expect it to change a lot. You added 4 new teams, but the other 14 were all already here, and minus Maryland, Rutgers is built under Schiano for as long as he's there in kind of classic Big Ten fashion. So it's still going to be a tough league to score points in.
So the bunny is leaving. I need to ask the room here and the stream. It's okay. Relax. I know you're going to the bakery. It's all good. What are you getting at the bakery, Vogues and Elijah? That's all I'm asking. Put the knife away, honey. Jesus.
I'm usually a scone guy.
Okay.
Yeah, that's usually where I go.
I'm drafting apple fritter first, but I love just the classic glazed donuts. I could eat 40 donuts.
The old fashioned donuts. Ooh, I could take down 6 of those. My stomach wouldn't feel good, but I'd love it.
Moonbot says the pecan sticky bun. Those are awesome.
There you go.
The normal, you get those giant cinnamon rolls, right? A lot of us have either lived in or visited smaller towns where they have the town bakery, where it's pure heaven. 3-Putt likes coffee cake. Rick says Iowa sucks. we went there. Tiger Shark wants a bagel. Those tractor tire donuts is what Eat Beef likes. Walter wants a soft pretzel. Is it the soft pretzel from The Office that Michael Scott gets that has all sorts of sugar and cinnamon, and it's that sugar just scoring explosion that takes you out by 2 in the afternoon. I had to just go off the Yellow Brick Road here for 2 seconds and talk bakery.
Really fast though, a chocolate glazed Long John with the Bavarian cream.
Those were good. That was lunch forever.
Hinky
dinky.
Those get rich. If you're eating it too early in the morning, those get really, really rich, but they are delicious.
Do they put you down or do they pump you up, folks? Like if you had the old bakery pick with a cup of coffee, did it hit great for a moment and then it was gut bomb later?
I think that's the case. The sweeter you go, I love a cinnamon roll as well. So occasionally we'll go that route. But first thing in the morning, it becomes you get that sugar rush, and then you do get a bit of a crash, which is why I typically try to stick to the scone variety. Especially if they're like a savory scone. I know that's like the most boring answer, but it's the actual answer.
If it's good, it's good. I mean, 3rd and 1, running the ball can be kind of boring, but it's barbaric and it gets the job done. If it's good, it's good.
That's right.
So
live to play another set of downs.
You do. So, you move the chains. See, and Rick brings up Krispy Kreme. Steven has had some Randy's. Quick shout out Saturday. Those are incredible. And that's all Junior does is bring all sorts of sugary treats between cookies and donuts home. But the wife is not into the Krispy Kreme glazed donut, just the original or regular.
She's right.
Those are incredible.
They're only good if they're hot and fresh. If they're hot and fresh, like straight out, and you're getting them like out of the fryer and they're still warm, they're delicious.
Those are great. I know they're different cold, with the way they're inflated, but they're awesome.
If you're getting them cold, it's a bottom tier donut. If you're getting it fresh, top tier.
Vogue, you want to hack for that, Elijah? David Chang does this on his Netflix live show all the time as a dessert. Just get a nonstick pan, fry it on both sides just a little bit for like a minute or two. Get a little caramelization, heats it back up. That's eaten.
I've seen that trick. Yeah.
Dude, I could do a bakery. I'd be 700 pounds and it'd be okay. Joel says, give me a fried cinnamon roll. 3-Putt is not happy about the size of said Krispy Kreme. The other Brian is like, there is some sort of addictive substance with Krispy Kreme. We'll get back to football. Vogues, you wrote about Nebraska being a surprise team potentially this year in your column with counterread.com and the unknowables. We don't know if Nebraska will be a surprise. They could be. We touched on those pivot games that Andy Staples touched on across the landscape of college football this year. There's a lot of games that are pivot games. We touched on this yesterday. What are a couple of pivot games to you for Nebraska? They either kind of keep your momentum going or could derail you momentum-wise for the season. What are a game or two you have circled for Nebraska this year? Those pivot games that are included that, all right, they need to do X and Y to be a surprise team.
Yeah, they're in a unique position of a lot of people think they're going to be pretty good, so they're almost expected to surprise people, which is borderline oxymoronic, but so it is. I mean, I think Colorado in week 2 jumps out right away, like that one, and Nebraska could lose that game. It's lost 3 straight to Colorado. Not good. Like, this Colorado team should be better than the 3 previous ones Nebraska already lost to. I understand those are different teams, different coaches, and the first 2. But that's one where a lot will be put towards that game emotionally, from the fan base. And I think it's natural for the players to, want revenge, for lack of a better term. So I think that would be a big one. If Nebraska should happen to lose that game, you would wonder a little bit coming back next week, which is, an FCS game. Like, what's the response like? And the fact that it comes right away in week 2, that you got that kind of test, because it's been an off season of growing momentum. What if it stops in week 2? I think would be the big question. Rutgers game a couple of weeks later. Those are 2 teams that are viewed kind of equivalent in the Big Ten pecking order, and I would agree with that assessment. It's going to be probably pretty close to a rock fight. Can Nebraska, with its offense in this game 6, whatever its offense looks like at that point, can it win that way? It won all of its games that way last year, so that one's pretty big. Later in the season, I think that the trip to USC, if Nebraska is close to what we think it could be, which let's call that 7 or 8 wins, where's USC at? And you got to go on the road for that one. That one's the late stage one that I would probably point to, that has the chance to change the season from like bad to good or pretty good to great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well done. Kraynak, what's up, brother? Back from suspension.
Yeah, I had to serve that first half suspension that you guys put me on.
It's all right.
I'm sure you didn't mention that.
No, we really did not pile on at all. We just kind of left it vague that, there was a fight in the locker room and you kicked somebody's ass.
And then the performance-enhancing drugs on top of that, Mark. We can let that go.
Kraynak went Richie incognito on Elijah and I, and I bring up Richie because that was our first interview ever as guys diving into the Nebraska football coverage way back in 1997.
I'll never get sick of that story of finding him in the like early days of the internet, finding a phone number in Arizona with the last name Incognito, and his father, who passed away, rest in peace, answered the phone. He's like, "Yeah, you want to talk to Little Richie or Big Richie?" Like, he seriously sounded just like. I'm like, Little Richie? He's like, "Yeah, he's not around right now. Who's this? You're in Nebraska, is that right?" Like, it was awesome. It was completely awesome. He had the perfect accent.
Kraynak's impersonation sounds like Papa Incognito.
Yeah,
sounded like him. Yeah.
Well, but thanks for letting me back from suspension. It's
fine.
Not what you do. It's not what you do in the first half. Brandon, we talked about this many times. Like this, we're entering the third, fourth quarter, so you just hold up your hand. You hold up those hands and with the number 4, and the other team has no chance. What
was cooler to see as you made your way to the stadium? Was it the helmet raise with kickoff, or it's the fourth quarter and the 4 fingers went up?
Fourth quarter is always a
thing. I love the helmets, man, between the Nebraska players or Colorado night game or Washington night game. They're holding the helmet up and it's gleaming with the lights. The fourth quarter thing, like, always freaked me out as a kid until it didn't. Like, the fourth quarter became very friendly for Nebraska as time moved on, but it wasn't that way for about a 3-year stretch.
I think in Arkansas they hold up lighters. Is that
probably?
No, maybe that's concerts. Maybe that's concerts. I don't know.
No, they're crack pipes down there.
Just take it one step further, Elijah.
We've talked bakery. We've introduced crack. We've talked offense. Vogues wants to crawl away right now.
Oh my god!
But
real problem down there.
Yeah.
Vogues, what do you got rocking here with Counter Read? I know we are excited that 3 Saturdays from today, we are hunkering down at the Single Barrel for pregame. Can't wait to do weekend editions again. But how about your weekend? What's the word from Vogues and Counter Read, counterread.com? How can folks get in touch, and what are you up to?
Yeah, you can just visit us at counterread.com. It's twice weekly Substack newsletter from myself and Aaron Sorensen. On the docket for next week and the weeks ahead is, of course, fall camp. A lot of that, it's time to jump into volleyball as well. So I'm been preparing some stuff for volleyball season ahead that I'm excited about, and like to, aside from, of course, following the day in and day out trials and tribulations of Nebraska's fall camp. I'm the sort of guy who's looking for UTEP updates, Colorado, of course. So excited to already starting to put together the game week previews, or at least the research for them. So that'll be a big part of the season ahead, and I think it's going to be a fun football season.
Yeah.
Not a lot of years in the past where where I felt that going in. There was just too much tension one way or the other. But this one feels a little bit more free. So it's a great time to jump in. Make sure you get those 2 exclusive newsletters a week, because I think there's going to be plenty to talk about.
Vogues, what's also shaking with the Common Fan podcast you're a part of?
Yeah. So the guys over there asked me to join them for a special series they did on the past every coaching change since Tom Osborne, and kind of what we could learn about Nebraska, why it may be where it is going into 2024. And that series wrapped up. Published the last episode with a look ahead basically at the Matt Rule era with Michael Severe. So if you hadn't heard any of those, and you got a long drive coming up or whatever else it is you like to do listening to podcasts, there's 6 episodes out there. That's a pretty comprehensive story, I think, when you put them all together, of Nebraska football in the 21st century.
That's awesome. Brandon Vogel with us, counterread.com. Vogues, enjoy your weekend and appreciate you much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Be good, Brandon.
Appreciate him. So Kraynak, Moonbot is asking about your hat. 3-putt thinks you went to Pepperdine.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
You rolling down with the kiddos tonight for the ball game?
Tonight? No. Because the worst timed end of the year baseball party is tonight. From 9 to 11, right in the middle of the Crawford fight. I'm like,
pull it up there.
What are we doing? Well, yeah, probably. It's at a pool though, right? It's at a pool. It's outdoors. So like the pool closes, so it's an outdoor situation, and so somebody's got to bring the big, monitor and whatever. I mean, we're working on it. But my God.
We're going to break into Elijah's
I don't think I am going to that thing tonight. Are you planning on attending the whole thing?
No.
The practice? You're not either, huh? Okay.
Should
we have a full breakdown on next week's show?
Here's what we wanted to see.
React. We're going to give you we got to have a reaction show.
There's no pads.
They're not even doing pads tonight?
No, they can't. It's not even practice 5 yet, so they can't legally.
Well, they're loosening. They're changing all this stuff, right?
No, I thought the whole argument was this was the first fully padded practice.
I don't believe they'll be in pads tonight.
This is why we need somebody at the thing. Cancel the party. I can't. It's an organization-wide thing, 3-putt. I can't cancel the party. It's an organ. It's all the age groups, right? It's not just.
Well, you could potentially, considering the Crawford fight, I think you're probably not going to get those 2 in the ring till 10:30 probably. You could show up, say your hellos, shake some hands, kiss some babies, and then give yourself a little Irish goodbye.
Yeah, I could.
Then
you got to find a place that has has it on.
Is it going to be a cover? Because I mean, it is astronomical for a lot of spots to get the fight. It's not like you can drop your normal household pay-per-view amount.
Yeah. What is it going right now? 99, I'm assuming, or something.
I don't know, but I know if you're a bar or restaurant and you want to get it, it's
much more expensive than that.
Several thousand.
I mean, they did throw him a parade here, though. I think he's incredible here. That'll do it.
Kraynak,
anyway, so not going to that damn practice because that's partially why.
What'd you think of the week with Coach Rule as Nebraska kind of kicked off fall camp earlier this week on Tuesday? A lot of players were front and center, which was great. Glenn Thomas yesterday, and the quarterbacks. You're a dude that's been and done a ton of Nebraska seasons. You're a season ticket holder. You take your boy. and your family and your daughter. I mean, it's awesome. You rolling in with everyone red clad and happy. Are you looking kind of like Vogues? You think this is going to be fun this season? Not painful, not torturous, not tempting. I think the season will absolutely be tempting, but I think Vogues is right. You can have fun with this season because of the intrigue for sure, but just there's a shot of confidence from the players, from the coaching staff, and then there's a shot of talent too.
I think Brandon hit on something when he said that this one will be fun because there's just not as much tension going into the season as there has been. And that's a really good way of putting it if you think back, because every year, I mean, you read it every year. All the columnists, everybody will say, this is one of the most important seasons.
This is huge, though. Think of the momentum.
Exactly.
No, but it
that's
is.
What I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
It's year 2 to year 3. You got a defense that's back. It's absolutely huge.
My question with the lack of tension is it because Husker fans have been hurt one too many times and they don't want to get their hopes up? Or is it because there's confidence in what Rule and his staff have built? You have a quarterback in place. Is that why there's lack of tension? Because I look towards the first one in terms of, I think Husker fans have just been hurt too many times before that they're not going to get their hopes up until something proves them that there's good reason to get their hopes up. That's why I think there's something of that lack of tension feeling right now in early August.
I wish I majored in sociology. Like, we are a sociological case study. I mean, seriously, we're so interesting as a fan base. It's probably a little of both there, Elijah, but I don't know. What you just reacted very similarly, Chris, to how every player approaches summer conditioning, right? So the fan and media equivalent of summer conditioning, our equivalent is this is the most important year. No, it really is, because just like right. Just exactly like all the players are like, this is the hardest I've ever worked in the summer. This is probably the most grueling conditioning off season we have ever had. We've never worked harder in our entire lives, way more than last year. And everybody's like, yep, totally. Yep. It's probably the same, right? I'm just saying it's probably really tough every summer. And same with us. It's just, yes, this one seems so important and consequential, but it doesn't feel as tense. It doesn't feel like you're asking these enormous questions like we have been, sort of like, whoa, can Frost even coach at this level? And then the consequences of that are crazy, right? That's where you start questioning everything from there, or just like, wow, this Whipple, what's going to happen? Can Adrian Martinez, just not turn it over at all?
Can someone help Adrian so it's not 1-on-11?
Right. Is Chinander cut out for D1 defensive coordinator position?
Absolutely, he was.
And Mike Riley, is he too nice of a, you know what I mean? You were questioning big.
Is Bo going to murder somebody on the sideline?
Completely, right? Does he even have the support that he needs from his athletic director now? Whereas now, it's more or less just man, I hope Raiola doesn't get the freshman jitters or something. You don't have these.
It's not normal concerns.
Yeah, it's right. We have just sort of basic, normal, regular, every year kind of concerns.
Well, the one that's a little unique this year is the turnovers. Where you go, can they beat a 15-year curse of negative turnover differential? Most of those years, embarrassingly so.
Even if you're still negative, it's not going to be minus 17.
Don't put that out. Knock on wood.
It can't be.
Yeah. They've proven that it can be over the course of about a decade.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. You're not questioning giant things right now, and that was a pretty specific concern you just had there. I don't think many fans are walking into the season concerned about the turnover differential, specifically in the 15-year curse of it. I think they're just hoping to win. If Nebraska is -5 in it, nobody's going to be like, well, damn it. It's just whatever. If it's -5, but you're 9-3, people aren't going to, worry about it.
You'll deal with it. You shift from damn, you went 5-7 again to, well, you're 9-3 and you could have been 10-2 or 11-1 if you don't go -1 or -2 against Ohio State, against Iowa. It turns into a specific pain point versus the entire season of, man, it was just brutal.
And I'm not sure. Would you want to call the kicking position a concern at this point in time? That's obviously not as big of a concern, but that is one of the main positions that puts points on the board for your team. Usually your kicker ends the year as the leading scorer. Are we concerned about the Alvano situation?
A little bit, but I was concerned about the Alvano situation pre-injury, just because he's super talented. What now?
Because he missed a lot last year.
Well, he's a freshman that just missed some kicks. Yeah, I mean, so no, absolutely. But what's Nebraska done? What's Nebraska done at kicker? What's Nebraska done at quarterback? What's Nebraska done at wide receiver, running back? They have went out and got options. They went out and got options, and there's competition. And if you can't get it done, guess what? Go into the bullpen. And that's difference. That'll be a difference.
Big, huge, consequential questions really aren't there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is anybody concerned that Matt Rule is, oh my God. Like, is there a legitimate argument to be made right now where people are like, I don't know if this Matt Rule guy is cut out for this? No one's saying that. It doesn't mean everybody thinks he's Belichick, but he doesn't appear to have the
There's
signs
a high
of
level
being
of
a total
competence.
Flop. Right. Is anybody like, oh my God, is Tony White even capable of running a deep? No, we all feel pretty good about that too. Is anybody like, oh my God, we're relying on all walk-ons at receiver? No, bunch of big scholarship dudes that are kind of fast. We got no depth at running back. Got like five of them. Well, the offensive line is going to be like, a lot of experience coming back. A couple NFL guys, an Outland watch list guy. Right? So I'm just saying, you don't have these huge overarching concerns. And for that reason alone, you can go to the stadium just sort of like, let's check this out. Let's watch this. With the excitement of someone like Raiola, who's he's one of many X factors. And we talked about that a few weeks ago, but Nebraska's got a few of those guys. Got a few X factor guys where you're like, if Nebraska hits on one of those guys as a superstar, look out, right? Nair. Nobody knows about Nair. Nair looked pretty damn good. Corey Barney. Nobody really knew about him. He looked pretty damn good.
Well, you've seen some proof with Jalen Lloyd as an example of what can this staff do with talent, and you can kind of nurture and groom and develop guys into a role, and they can thrive at it. And Lloyd's your shining example of the guy that came in, was young, super athletic and talented, and they used him. And is he going to keep getting better? You think so, because, wow, look what they did early on. Look at the young defensive line, right?
Yeah.
With Lenhart and Princeville and Van Poppel. Look at their impact early in the year. They went and got dudes that were ready to play a role early in their college career. And then the guys that weren't ready, they weren't forced into action. So the plan is a reason to smile. Shavers and Barney, Doug chimes in, are two guys that you're thinking you could hear some good things about this year, but you're not going to have to rely on them. Is the thing.
Yeah. So listen, whatever concerns you have as a fan are kind of run of the mill. They're the types of concerns that you would have going into any year, right? Where it's like, hey, maybe one position isn't chock full of, proven all conference caliber players, but you got some decent talent there, and, they'll probably be okay. Right. I don't know. So I see where Brandon's coming from in terms of, this is a year where you can just kind of sit and watch, let alone having a generational talent. We'll see if it translates into production, but definitely a generational talent at quarterback who also happens to kind of get Nebraska, knows what he's getting into. His dad's engraved on the damn stadium, right?
It was a conscious choice to come here and help bring it back.
And right, and I say this with respect to Tanner Lee, and I could not play the position. Okay, so let's just take that aside. But you think about maybe the mentality of like a Tanner Lee type quarterback, where hey, really good in gym shorts, really good throwing the patterns, ball flies out of his hand, he looks incredible, really gifted thrower. Period. Right, like that's what he was, but he wasn't necessarily the dude that's going to, no one talked about, man, he stands in strong till the last second and delivers a strike. He is tough. No one ever said that about him, right? Raiola, dad's an all-pro center. I mean, come on. Tanner Lee did have great hair, Tiger Shark diver. He sure did, and that's a great comment. So does Raiola, by the way. But you know what I mean? So like you have it's not only a generational talent, but it's a guy that I think you have confidence that mentally he's probably going to be all right. Right? Like you're just sort of like, no, this dude is he's really serious about his craft. He grew up tough. His dad was not going to let him be a diva gym short quarterback. Like that's just not even in their makeup. It wasn't even allowed. So you don't have concerns about that. And from everything you read and see, he's already earned the respect of other receivers and pretty much the whole team. As a true freshman, right? This guy should be at prom right now, right? So he's done that as well. So yeah, I think you go into this season legitimately excited and just wanting to watch it unfold with no expectations that they're going 16, 17-0. There's none of that. There is an expectation that they make a bowl game. That seems very realistic and fair. So I don't know. It's less tense. Brandon was absolutely correct.
I guess I'll half disagree with you on this one. I don't think I necessarily agree with the point that there aren't concerns with this football team, overarching concerns. Well, I guess there's a difference between concerns and overarching concerns, and that's kind of semantics. But I will say, in terms of it feels like an almost nothing to lose season. Maybe a better way to put it is the only way you can go is up. Because you look at what this team has defensively, the coaching staff knows what they have defensively. Matt Rule talked about that with us at Big Ten Media Days, saying that was going to be one of the advantages of fall camp with their offenses. Well, we know what our defense is going to be, so we kind of have a standard that we're comparing our offense to all through fall camp, knowing what the defense is. It's going to give us a good idea with the offense. That's encouraging. With the talent you bring in offensively, the only place you can go is up. But like whenever I think about teams that don't have overarching concerns coming into fall camp, you're talking about college football playoff teams. Like that's what you're talking about. The teams that are expected to go make a college football playoff are the teams that don't have overarching concerns. I think there are a few overarching concerns with this team. It just doesn't necessarily compare to some of the overarching concerns that we have glossed over in past seasons. I just think as you look at it now, we're going to reach probably mid-October and think back to this time of year and say, well, maybe we should have spent a little bit more time on this issue. And those are some things I'm bringing up. Kicking, the adjustment of a quarterback to a college game. Also add some of the depth on the offensive line. You talk about the experience on the offensive line. The thing about the Big Ten is it's rough and tumble. Offensive linemen are going to go down. There is almost a 0% chance in the Big Ten that your starting five from your first game is going to be your starting five by the last game, let alone the fact you're going to start all 12 games. Like, that is an impossibility. Once you get a little further down the depth chart on the offensive line, a lot of guys with potential that don't have as much experience. There's concerns, I think, that we're going to reach the middle of the season. We're going to say, maybe we should have seen this coming at the beginning of the year. But I agree with the heart of your argument in that there's only one place you can go, and it's up. And the concerns that we're seeing this year don't necessarily compare to years past. And those were issues that we also glossed over.
And there aren't camps. And there aren't camps in the fan base right now, I don't think, like there has been in the past, of people that were just like, dude, Frost has to go. This is ridiculous. And there was a big percentage of the fan base that were saying that. And another ones were like, what are you talking about? He's a loyal son. There's like infighting within the fan base about really key aspects of the program, like really key aspects of the program, foundational, things that if they go wrong, truly change the whole trajectory, like big fundamental problems. I don't feel those. I don't know what that would be. Like, what is the big fundamental disagreement among the fan base right now? I don't think there is one.
The only.
I mean, there were still. I'm not sure, Schmidt. You weren't watching this. I'll say this because I was watching the Husker football press conferences from yesterday on YouTube, kind of following along with the live chat. People were saying there were still people in there disagreeing about whether or not Dylan Ryle, it's his job to lose at quarterback. The people in there arguing it's Heinrich Harburg's job to lose at quarterback. But again, it's not
minor.
It's not like significant vocal part of the fan base thinking Heinrich Harburg is going to start. I think
the biggest concern right now is back to this importance factor. Can you get it done with a 5-star quarterback in his first year, with a veteran offensive line, with an improved wide receiver room and running back room that's veteran, with a defense that has 9 starters back, with a guy that probably said no to both USC and UCLA, because this might be your last rodeo with Tony White before you got transition in staff.
Welcome, Billy Butler.
Right. But the point is get it handled. I mean, make progress, show improvement, make a jump. And you're not just throwing out, hey, I think we're going to be pretty good, and I'm quoting Rule, just to appease. He's seen enough football in his life, and he's been in enough tough spots to be truthful. And that's the other, last part of this is the communication factor. He's not going to be fanning the flames in a positive way if he didn't believe it. Yeah. So all of that from the horse's mouth is enough for me to say, okay, this team, when he says pretty good, he means pretty good. That means that he's not going to put a number on it. We can all apply a number. And the thing that I think can give Nebraska, or does give Nebraska fans comfort, is you've got a guy that's super detailed with Rule. You've got a staff that's really talented. And then you've gone above and beyond with more support staff, where you're going to have 2 folks, not just Terrence Knighton, but you're going to have another guy working with the defensive line. It's not just Coach Donnie working with the offensive line. You've got an assistant. Nebraska's not been cheap on going in on people they think are pretty high football guys to help with their position coaches. So you're going to get more attention. You're going to get more development. Should lead to more depth, and guys can come in and contribute and play and perform, whether they start or not. It's not going to be this, let's throw a Hail Mary up and hope that injuries don't happen and you get some breaks and poof, magically wins happen. There's been a plan in place, and it's been pretty detailed.
And this is, man, really psychobabble a little bit, but really unified too. There was so much discord and disarray among the staffs going back through Riley that it even leaked out to where we could see it. I mean, there's, in every team, every family or whatever, there's stuff behind the scenes that no one sees, right? But it was so bad that we even saw it in the public, right? Like, you remember all the crazy Riley stuff with having to fire Banker, but he didn't really want to. It was an Eichhorst or whoever the GM guy was.
Go get Disco Bob.
Yeah, and then Bob comes in, right? And then there was just obvious discord just there. And then with Frost, remember him and Greg Austin sort of duking it out in the media, and Frost bringing in Hoskinson and some other former Huskers to teach Cam Jurgens how to snap a football without Austin even knowing. And you know what I'm saying? It was a mess, right? There was sort of like a power vacuum that everybody was not going in the same direction. Under Rule, now you hope it's the right direction, but everybody seems to be going that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, he's the boss. He's the boss. He's respected. That's his voice. And you're following that leader.
Have you heard from any assistants anything other than, they defer to coach, they believe in his plan, they're heading that way? That's all you've heard. And half the time, even if it's not a great plan, if you're all on the same page, it helps. Right? There's a direction at least. He's chosen
feedback.
A direction. Yeah,
they're not silenced if they have a disagreement or they have an idea or input. It's shared, right? And away they go.
So it's a group that And so imagine that discord too, if you're on that staff and you see that and you hear that, difference of opinion and coaching styles between Austin and Frost, right? And you're one of the offensive linemen, like you're picking up on that. That kind of throws you in disarray. That doesn't give you a lot of confidence. It doesn't make you probably play your best, because you're just kind of like, what the hell is going on around there?
Guys
right?
want to play for him.
They
believe in him and they trust him. That's the biggest thing. There's not a lot of BS being slung, and that's refreshing.
And we're not talking about a team that has lost, that has just been getting bludgeoned. No. That's a team that's been losing by a few points for the most part. Now
that's
this all changes.
That is a hump they have to get over, though. The one score losses.
Straight up. Yeah. This conversation changes, though, with the Colorado game. Like, let's be honest. Nebraska loses to Colorado. It's DEFCON. It's DEFCON 5. It's people are just
for the moment. It's early enough that you can get better as a team. Emotionally and psychologically, for the fan base, it's freak out time.
Well, and for the players, they'll feel that too.
For the team, though, the team knows that there's dudes on the other side at Colorado.
Yeah, but this has at worst read out around the world vibes to it.
Oh,
which I'm glad.
Yes,
I'm glad and that's in reference to what that was Texas
2010 lost to Texas. Yes.
And to where, a game that had enough pressure and attention on it, and then the athletic department piled on
revenge payback. Yes,
and called it read out around the world, and just made it just added pressure. So I appreciate that Dannon and the athletic department aren't adding anything here. There's enough pressure already. Just play the game, right? You don't need to brand it anything further than it already is.
I remember covering that game, and Kevin from Texas asking about Sharpie. Sharpie's on a little vacay. We'll get back with him next week. But that's where the Iron Horse is at. But that read out around the world, I remember, in humble brag here, being able to cover that for Fox National Radio. Yeah. So my job was to interview Mac Brown or the winning coach after the game.
Mac Brown.
Which was Mac Brown, not Bo Pelini. And the amount of tension in that Texas locker room, I shouldn't even say tension, relief. Like I think it was Greg Davis was his OC that just had been torched for being awful. So Greg comes up and hugs Mac, tears in both their eyes.
Jeez.
Like, how did we just pull this off? Right. It's that vibe. And then we talked to Mac, and he's complimentary, of course, of Nebraska, and Texas wasn't anything special that year in 2010. I think they were, I don't know, maybe a Fiesta Bowl team, but they were far. No, they went 5-7 that year, I think.
So wasn't that the year they got Mac Brown fired?
Yeah, it was, but he still won in Lincoln in September or October. But it was, that's a great comparison, Kraynak. The read out around the world. All right, let's pay these guys back. If you're a Nebraska fan, the Buffs.
Yeah.
Coming to town under the lights.
Hey, good Mac Brown story. Our boy Brian Paul.
Yeah, BP. We love him. Great ribeyes.
Shout out to BP. I hope he doesn't mind me telling the story. So, he used to cover Nebraska for Channel 3 for KMTV. He used to shoot video and go to all the games and whatever. He claims he's going to get a little nasty. He's in the men's room.
Oh no.
Right? He did his business in there, right? Number 2. Apparently so did, I don't know if Mac Brown, whatever. He just comes into the bathroom like directly after, pre-hand wash. Throws out his hand to shake hands with Brian. So Brian claims I stink palmed Mac Brown before the Big 12. I think it was before the Big 12 championship game 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, to be fair,
stink palm.
That's what he calls it. It was pre-hand wash.
if for both of them it's pre-hand wash, you're going to go wash your hands anyway, yeah. So like, there is the argument that doesn't really matter if one person's already washed their hands, and that seems wrong because now you got to go rewash. But if you're both pre-wash,
I had never really considered that thing before, but the fact that you take one of the Division I's top coaches, and he's got probably little poop particles on his hand from you. That's kind of interesting. I don't think any of us can say that. He's very proud of it, though. He's very proud of it. We should almost get him a shirt.
Got to pee next to Jerry Tarkadian.
Oh yeah,
in the press box. Did
he use that same towel to dab up after?
No, he did not have a towel on his shoulder while he was peeing.
That'd be good.
But I think old Doc had him as a guest when Nebraska played Fresno State. This was the freshman year for Amir, the kickoff return in that shootout game.
Oh yeah,
with Carr at quarterback as a freshman.
Yeah.
100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But that and Alex Rodriguez, I think he was in the can when I was in the can when Miami was in town.
Wow.
But that's about it. And then DJ Durkin, remember that guy from Maryland?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Big Ten Media Days back in, I don't know, when did he get popped? This was the year before he got whacked. But we're in the Chicago for Big Ten Media Days, and there's a row, like 8 to 10 urinals. And I don't know, one of the three in the middle. And Durkin just wanders up right next to me and just starts peeing and starts talking. There's 40 to choose from.
Yeah, there used to be a game that you could pick where it's just like, what is the if you're it's one of those dumb
it's
games,
an unwritten rule. You sit if it's an empty movie theater, you don't sit right next to somebody. You give a couple of spots before.
Exactly. Like it was a whole thing. Like which urinal do you choose in this scenario? And it's to be surrounded by the fewest amount of human beings. Like you always choose that one.
But he just
That's interesting.
Ponied up and hey, how's it going? Hey,
Yeah, I think
coach, thanks.
I think DJ needed someone to talk to. He never looked very certain or sure about Maryland. You remember those his press conferences? You could tell he was just like, "This is not going to work." Like that was the overtone or the undertone of everything.
He had him playing well before. Unfortunately, one of his players died. I mean,
yeah, that's true. So. Well, God, now I feel terrible for bringing that up.
So,
I'm glad you shared a pee with him then.
Well, Vic says I seem to have an interesting ability to find people in the bathroom.
For a good time. Call Schmidt.
My name is not on the wall in the bar though.
Never pee alone.
Something we got to correct though after the Colorado game.
No one shall pee alone. Chris will do it with you.
Yeah.
Oh.
On that note, Kraynak, what's the weekend look like?
Well, Crawford tonight. I'm gonna find a way to watch it somehow. Y'all watching that?
What's the Vegas feel with the
Crawford is a large favorite. I think he's like minus 700 on the money line.
Okay. So the guy he's fighting is Israel Madrimov. He's 10-0. He's from like Uzbekistan.
Mm-hmm.
Heavy punchers, what he's considered. He's 10-0, 7 knockouts. But he's kind of an unknown, right? He hasn't fought in this fight's being put together. Saudi Arabia is like really trying to, break into the international sports world big time. Like they've done with soccer, like they've done with a golf tournament, and then now this is kind of one of their forays into boxing. So they're putting that on. It's
by positive publicity versus our human rights record.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's going into this one is going to be outdoors in LA at I think like an MLS type stadium. So it's got that kind of thing around it. It's a little bit different, but you don't really know. It's tough with Madrimov because you don't know is like, oh, is this like the next dude that's just kind of coming out of obscurity and he's the real deal? He's considered a bigger and more powerful boxer than Crawford, which Crawford takes exception to, and Crawford has heard that a few times, where it's just like, and when you see Crawford lately, he obviously has had to go up in weight class because this is, I believe, his 4th jump in weight class.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's his 4th jump. So you think that's, fairly significant. And he looks thicker. And you think about, he's 36. So
30,
guys that are,
he just turned 37, didn't he?
May have that. Yeah. But he's past the typical boxing prime.
Excuse me. He turns 37 next month.
Okay. So, right. So he's getting, in boxing terms, he's getting up there in age. And so I guess that one of the bigger concerns with him is like, did he put so much into the Spence fight? The Spence fight was sort of the ultimate validation fight that he had never had. And he put a lot into it. And anybody that watched that fight, I mean, you talk about a clinic. Like I don't know if I've ever seen a boxer more prepared to just completely dismantle his opponent than that one. I mean, that was just an absolute woodshed. Brilliant masterpiece of a fight. So you wonder, like, okay, did that take off some of his edge? Because part of Crawford is like feeling wronged and, wanting to prove to the world. And he did that. He did that there unquestionably. So does he still have that? Does he still have that competitive edge to him? Is he okay carrying a few extra pounds? Where he's a little
he'll be okay tonight. But Elijah, we were talking yesterday about what this fight can do for the next career maker, legacy maker.
Yeah, he wants Canelo. That's the fight that Bud wants to end it with. I think that he wants it to be his last fight. And I was reading a little interview with the promoter about. Bud was disappointed and the promotion was disappointed. They weren't able to take advantage of the Errol Spence momentum as much as they would have liked to. They wanted to get another fight towards the beginning of this year. Never quite worked out. Spence kind of ducked the rematch, got a medical procedure right whenever it was time for him to decide whether or not he wanted to be in. So they're never quite able to take advantage of that. This was the fight that they had to work with, but it was picked by Bud himself. I think the only question with tonight is, does the age start showing through for Bud? All the fights he's been in still didn't take all that much damage against Spence, hasn't taken that much damage in his career as a whole. I don't think the age shows through. That's the only question to me. If Bud comes out on his A game, knowing that a potential impressive performance here could maybe get him a shot with Canelo, because Canelo says there's currently nothing to gain in a fight with Bud Crawford. That's his current mentality, is I'm the more famous fighter. He's got everything to gain by coming and beating me. I have nothing to gain by beating this guy that's coming up from bottom division. If you continue to solidify your legacy, keep the undefeated streak going, can you give Canelo a reason to step in the ring? I think there's still motivation. I think he's still going to take this thing seriously, knowing he's near the tail end of his career. I don't think that's going to be a factor. The question to me is just, does that 36-year-old, almost 37-year-old age catch up to him? Because as soon as it does, typically boxing careers go downhill pretty fast when the age starts catching up with you. So that's the only question to me. I think he's in a class of his own as a boxer.
Oh, yeah.
He's number one pound for pound in the world for a reason.
Yeah.
If he's on his game tonight, it's not going to be a long fight, in my opinion.
The bigger concern too for Crawford going into it is, against a guy like that, is as you keep going up in weight classes, the consequences of getting caught just go way up, right? You get caught by 135, 140 pounder, you can withstand that blow, but the higher you go up, if you get one right on the nose or right in the right spot when you're kind of getting sloppy defensively, that could be night time. So recently in some of his fights, he's gotten a little cocky and sloppy defensively. It's not because he doesn't know how to play defense or doesn't take it seriously, but he's a guy who likes to feel it out the first 3 or 4 rounds and just file save as, just like completely understanding the opponent, figuring out his tendencies and how he's trying to attack him, and occasionally gets caught, right? He gets caught. Now, luckily, so far, have you ever seen Crawford with a black eye or a cut? No. The dude doesn't. No. He hasn't sustained damage, so he does get caught a few times. That's a concern. Like, as he gets a little bit older, maybe a 1/10 of a second slower or whatever, is he going to get caught and it's just game over?
He's too good a technician. To put himself in danger.
We'll see. Yeah. Even whenever he does get caught, he tends to be able to employ the proper head movement to make it more of a glancing blow as opposed to
Exactly.
clean, even whenever he does get caught. To bring this conversation full circle, like as you talk about a Bud Crawford fight, Mark, you're talking about with Husker football not having overarching concerns going in. That's how you feel about Bud Crawford. I'm just waiting to feel that way about Husker football, and that's not how I feel going into this season in terms of no concerns. If they operate on their level, they'll be fine. That's not how I feel about Nebraska, but that is how I feel about Bud. If he operates on his level, the level we've come to expect from him, he will be A-okay tonight.
It's Elijah Herbel, Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt.
One more thing.
No. Hail
What do you got?
Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Subscribe, Hail Varsity YouTube.
Look at Chris.
Hail
putting his
Varsity
foot down.
Radio Twitter at H Varsity Radio.
You putting your foot down on this one?
Possibly. We got donuts to go eat.
Oh, is that right? Okay. So yeah, Bud tonight. Looking forward to it. It's great though. And if you haven't watched Bud Crawford, he's not sponsoring, no free shout outs. But if you're one of those people that has not watched him, have heard about him, just do yourself a favor. You don't even have to be a boxing expert to appreciate the artistry. Starting in round 4 or 5, he'll end the thing.
That's pretty good. Kraynak, we'll figure out a where and a when to watch Bud. We'll
pool party.
Just crash over at Elijah's and check it out there. We'll talk to you next week as we get closer to Nebraska football 2024. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for tuning in to Hail Varsity with your friends at Cornhead Lager.